Thanks for stopping by to hear an overview of this new book, Signs and Psalms. Let's start with the words of poet Wendell Berry, who said, everything is sacred, except for the things that have been desecrated. So people have asked if this is a religious book. Religious, I ask myself, and the definitive answer is no. But I do hope it finds its place among all that's sacred in the world. So let's start with the opening poem. Turn to things that open. Gates, leaf buds, birth canals, portals. Relax the grab of muscles. Tease open your cinched knots. Smooth, crinkled fault lines that map your face. Drop a weary tongue into the cradle of the jaw. Thaw the mountains, unflex the guns, unfurl fists, and follow signs that spring you open. So here's to opening up. I will open 6 more poems out of the 36 in this collection, and I trust that that is enough to give you a taste of this book. Let's start at the real beginning with the very last poem in the book, of which there's also an excerpt of on the back. But the book actually started with an image, kind of like a recurring dream, that I couldn't unsee, of a nondescript person on the street in an old coat wearing a sandwich sign, the kind with a message on the front and on the back. And on that sign was the message of all time, the one we need, but the one we just keep walking by. And so here is poem number 1. Poet as prophet. Not a saint in a bedazzled robe, but a faded coat with bulging pockets on the corner of Idaho and 8th Street, calling out messages that no one hears. If only the words could be flashed on a neon sandwich sign for all to see, and the voice amplified down Main, calling out through dry air. Calling anyone to follow the search for nourishment in the night, rustling through trash, pocketing warm words, sniffing out crumbs of truths. And join in the glow of a flame to gather and weave lost words and puzzle together entangled, splintered stories, in hopes that one day, on any frozen street corner, a new prophet will be heard, calling out the future, followed, found in the truth-telling of a newly birthed poem. The photo that accompanies this poem is the cover photo taken of a tattered sign found lying on a cobblestone road in the south of France. It's the perfect place to begin and end the book, with that vibrant red arrow eagerly still pointing somewhere, and those magnificent cobblestones. And so to the age-old quest of puzzling together entangled and, yes, sometimes very splintered stories. I dedicate this book to the world we are doing our damnedest to live in right now, and the accompanying signs that we are trying to decipher as we march, as we walk, as we live out psalms of lament and joy and keep breathing. In my case, I just kept writing. And over time, it began to dawn on me that there was an invisible thread running through all these poems, and it was what was on that sandwich sign. These simple words: tell the truth. And while it should be simple to tell the truth, we now understand just how complicated it can get. And yet some of us have known that for a very long time. In my family, a rebellion was necessary for the truth to come out. On my website, I talk about how while my siblings were rebelling in all the normal ways, which I'm sure some of you are very familiar with, I only seem to be able to rebel quietly inside of a poem, where it could be disguised like a secret code. But I have been desperate for my poems to tell the truth, even when they had to be coaxed out and revised again and again. We all know just how complicated telling the truth can be, and the stakes were never higher. And perhaps more than ever, it is something that we avoid at all costs, perhaps. But mental health professionals agree across the board that repressing the truth can destroy you. For example, in 2022, I was called to jury duty, where I met a killer. And the facts of this case, by the way, are now part of the public record. But she must have been 4'11", in her 40s, a Boise native, and quite charming. But she sat on a powder keg of lies. And we all wanted to believe her so very much, especially me, having been raised in a very chaotic home, which led to the birth of my very first book, In Your Bones, Poems of Radical Forgiveness. And all my books are tied to it somehow, with threads of forgiveness and self-preservation. But this little lady had a troubled relationship with the truth, which is a more accurate way of saying she was a liar. For all 7 hours of her interrogation, which we did indeed watch, she lied. While detectives were uncovering the truth behind every lie. We even had to watch her proudly show an officer how she could change the location on her phone to mask the truth of where she actually was, thinking that she was so clever, often mentioning her high IQ along the way. In the end, she defied her attorneys and took the stand on her own behalf, thinking she was the best one, the only one who could sell her story. And I gotta say, she was impressive. But we then convicted her of 9 counts out of 10, including first-degree murder. Someone jokingly asked me what kind of a poem I would write after that experience, and I couldn't imagine doing that until I started thinking more about truth and the destruction of lies. And poem number 2 was the result. This is called Damaged Goods. Don't take the stand. Hold your right hand up and pepper me with bullets aimed at my soft torso. High caliber verbiage shot with your tongue on the trigger as you step out of the chamber, clicking off the safety. Loaded and cocked, ready to fire, trained to kill. Stand down and step up to silence. Flip your safety back on, unload your lips, uncock your fingers. Swallow those bullets and slam yourself down until you see your words shot full of holes.